Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to WHIMS, and today I'm going to give you my top 10 favourite A Christmas Carol adaptations. Now this list, some of these entries are in no particular order, but some of these entries are obviously planned. In the early stages, especially from 1 to about 7, they could be interchanged, but for the most part a lot of this list is in the order in which I basically place them effectively. So my first adaptation that I'm going to talk about is number 10, and it is Mickey's A Christmas Carol. And I know this one is mostly a family-friendly version of A Christmas Carol. It's about Mickey and the gang effectively in, a Christmas Carol story. But what I like about this version is this version feels like the perfect introduction to people who are fans of the Christmas Carol story. It's a great way of introducing children of various different generations to the Christmas Carol story without it being too intense or too dark. But then it also has a lot of the charm and a lot of the wit and a lot of the interesting dialogue that did encompass the original Charles Dickens novel. So it's actually a very accurate, it's a very well done adaptation. It's very well animated. It's got great characters. Seeing people like Jiminy Cricket playing the Ghost of Christmas Past and having Uncle Scrooge from Uncle Scrooge from or Scrooge McDuck from DuckTales playing Scrooge. It was the role he was born to play, literally born to play. I thought that was very interesting, and I like the fact that the giant from Mickey and the Beanstalk, Willie the Giant, plays the Ghost of Christmas Present. There's so many good Disney cameos in this, which I really do like. I like the fact that Badger and Mole from the Wind in the Willows mini classic of Ichabod and Mr. Toad play a couple of characters in this one. The people who come to collect money and donate for the poor and destitute. And Scrooge says most people would rather die than go to the workhouses. Well, if they rather die, then they better do it and decrease the surplus population. That was such a good scene in the original text, but in this particular story they do a much more light-hearted version of it. They do often surmise a lot of the characterizations down to just slapstick every once in a while, but they do keep the original theme of the story, which is the redemption of a man who was thought to have no redemption at all. So in my opinion, this is a great introduction to a lot of very small children to the story of A Christmas Carol, and it's a very great way of introducing them to the darker aspects of the story whilst also keeping a very light-hearted element to it. So that's my number 10, it's Mickey's A Christmas Carol, and my number 9 is A Christmas Carol from 1999. Now, if you've seen this version, you know that it has the likes of Richard E. Grant, Patrick Stewart, and Dominic West in some of the key roles in this story. But what I really like about this version, despite the fact that it's made by the Hallmark Channel, you do kind of get this impression that there was a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of time that went into this. It's almost like when Illumination made the Super Mario Brothers film. It feels like they're mostly known for their cheapness, the Hallmark Channel. Usually a lot of the time you can usually feel the cheapness on the screen when you watch a lot of their films, especially their comedy Christmas rom-coms, but for the most part this adaptation is really good. Patrick Stewart manages to give the right level of sincerity to a lot of his performance, and he is very good in a lot of scenes, and I do think he plays the part very genuinely. But at the same time, there are moments that are a bit odd in the adaptation, but I do like the fact that this adaptation stays very faithful to the original book, but it also manages to do a lot of interesting things with previously established ideas. And I like, this is a little bit of a smaller detail, but I like the fact that in a lot of the scenes where they're transitioning from one location to the other, instead of doing a crossfade, which is what a lot of Hallmark Channel films do whenever they're making big transitions, like they're transitioning from 1 year to the next or whatever, they usually use the environment. Like, say, for example, when the Ghost of Christmas Past visits Scrooge, they go back to the past by a transition of having leaves fall on the ground and having the leaves be swept away to be turned into snow. I like that aspect. I like the transitions in this particular adaptation. And I like the fact that even though there are some aspects of this film that are kind of dated, it still manages to keep the original heart of the story at bay. And I really do like the fact that even though there are elements of his performance that are kind of a little bit insane, a little bit over the top, I do like Patrick Stewart as the role of Scrooge. He really does a very good job of really kind of selling the fact that this is a guy who is a very hard shell to crack. He's a guy who's lived a very kind of complicated life, and he's had a lot of very complicated issues to deal with, and he's trying to reconnect with his nephew. He's trying to do all these things, but at the same time you almost get the impression that he doesn't want to bother. That's such an interesting idea, and I think this version has probably the most interesting version of the Ghost of Christmas Future, which is essentially the shadow of death, with sort of like the yellow eyes peeking out. I actually like that detail a lot, but I like the fact that it keeps the original theme of the idea of Scrooge has the opportunity. He's amassed a lot of wealth over the years, but he just fails to part with it because he doesn't want to fall into the same spot as a lot of the people who've gone to poverty. I like that idea, and it's shown throughout the adaptation that this is the case. But what I really do like about this particular instalment is it doesn't feel like they're half-arsing anything. You feel like they're putting as much as they can into the original source material, and it feels genuine, and it's just such a great adaptation. If you haven't seen it, it's the 1999 Charles Dickens A Christmas Carol adaptation. You can see it. Sorry, that was a message on my phone. I'm reading the list off of my phone, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But yeah, that's my number 9 spot. That's the 1999 version starring Patrick Stewart, which you can find on YouTube. If you type in A Christmas Carol 1999 Patrick Stewart, you'll get a copy of the hour-long version. But what I really like is it's a great adaptation. It's not my favourite adaptation, obviously, that it goes a lot more further down than this and that, but I do really like this particular version. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's got a great cast, and despite the fact that it's a film made by the Hallmark Channel network, you do feel like they put a lot of effort into it, so that's always a plus. But yes, that's number 9, Christmas Carol 1999. Moving on to number 8, it is Ross Kemp's A Christmas Carol from 2000. Now this one really surprised me when I first saw it, because I first thought, when I first heard about it, it's going to be called Ross Kemp, A Christmas Carol. It's probably going to be like one of those hard-hitting Ross Kemp documentaries that he used to do about the Afghanistan and Iraq and things like that, and gangs and all this stuff, where he's just basically like a fly-on-the-wall commentator about the poor and the destitute. That's what I thought it was originally, but when this particular drama came out, he was mostly known for playing Grant Mitchell in the soap EastEnders. He's probably one of these two Mitchell brothers who basically they're essentially nice guy thugs. Basically, they're people who do all sorts of dodgy things. But I think Grant is the more likeable of the two. I feel like he's the more reasonable of the two. If you were to ever get involved in a confrontation with him, he'd be the one who'd want to know the ins and outs, whereas Phil would probably want to kick someone's head in as soon as look at them. That's the kind of impression that you get from these two characters. But when you see him play Eddie Scrooge, which is his version of Scrooge, it's set in modern day, and it's essentially set on a council estate in London, and Ross Kemp plays Eddie Scrooge, who's a loan shark, and him and Jacob Marley basically go round and they essentially grab people and harass people who owe them money and things like that. And I think what I really like about Ross Kemp as an actor, and what I do miss from him in the acting arena, is how funny he can be, and how often he has, these very odd comments that really do make you chuckle a little bit. And he is essentially a lovable sort of hard man in many ways. So I really do think he's a hard man. He's almost like a very villainous character. You could almost imagine him being a henchman of a villain in a Marvel film. But what I really like is he has a very soft side as well. He has a very kind of almost soft centre, as it were. And I really do like that. And I like, one of the things I really like about this adaptation is it starts off on a very grim note. It starts off with Jacob Marley being murdered instead of dying. And I really do like that change, because it immediately throws you in and says, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have Jacob Marley be murdered, and then we're going to have a good majority of the story focused around how he died. And you know that Scrooge knows something about it, but he's not saying what it is. And of course that's something that's very much akin to how Grant Mitchell was in a lot of EastEnders. He does feel like he's a decent fellow, but he does often do very shady things to protect his family a lot of the time, as does Phil. But what's very interesting about this episode, this particular instalment, is he does know something about Jacob's murder, and that's kind of the whole entire reason why he's visited by the three ghosts. And I want to talk about the individual ghosts as they are, because they're not just simply a candle or someone in a white robe and then a guy who chuckles and wears a robe like Father Christmas and wears like a holly wreath round his head and says, "Come in, know me better, man," or the shadow of death in the case of Close to Christmas Future. Each and every single personification of the ghost focuses on something that's happening in his life. The ghost of Christmas Past is played by his father, Eddie's father, and I like that idea because he's essentially confronting his father and saying, "You're the reason why I'm this way. You never gave us a good Christmas. You never made us feel, wanted or loved since Mother died." And I really do like that Eddie in this scenario is actually confronting his father and saying, "You did all these things to us." And I like that idea of essentially making the Ghost of Christmas Past be something that you need to confront and stare in the face of. It's such an interesting idea from a Christmas Carol adaptation, and I feel like this particular version is pretty good. And what I really like about the way the ghosts are done, the father's the Ghost of Christmas Past, and the Ghost of Christmas Present is Jacob Marley. And I really do like that because it really does show that, like I said, at the beginning of this particular drama, Jacob Marley is murdered and Scrooge knows who did it. And throughout the course of the story, he's seeing the present day circumstances, the, troubles of the Cratchits, his nephew and all these other things, as well as other things that are going on throughout the story, through all these different areas. But you're also... Jacob Marley forces Eddie to confront the fact that you allowed me to die. You ratted me out. You are a grass. You're terrible. Basically all EastEnders jargon, effectively. And sorry for the noises in the background. I live in sort of like an apartment building, so you're hearing a lot of the doors go. But for the most part, this adaptation's wonderful, especially with the way the ghosts are treated. And I like the fact that, another detail that I want to mention before I quickly move on, is when Scrooge wakes up from every visitation, it's not all happening in one night. And it's not happening in the case of like 2 days. It's happening on a continual loop. So the film starts off on Christmas Eve, and he's basically going around holding people up as a loan shark does for money and do all sorts of crazy things. But when he wakes up after a visitation from the ghost, he goes outside and he sees that he's also reliving Christmas Eve over and over and over again. And there's even a very funny moment that's almost reminiscent of Groundhog Day, where he sort of goes around and he starts to, flog all sorts of CDs and video games and starts giving them to the kids on the estate and says, "It's a gift, you silly little brat," and things like that. And he's clearly, he's giving all these gifts without any real heart or any real sentimentality or any real, heart and warmth and comfort to it. It's just kind of like he's doing it the way a school bully would show kindness. Like, it's not really meant with much sincerity or anything like that. And I found that particularly very funny. And there's this recurring gag which has nothing to do with the Christmas Carol, but I found it to be really amusing. There's this moment where he steals a TV from a single mum with 2 kids, and he takes the TV all the way up to the top of this council estate, to the highest building, and he basically drops it off. And I kept saying to myself, I hope no one's walking down below, because imagine getting hit on the head with a television as you're walking by, like doing your Christmas shopping. And I thought that was particularly hilarious. And whenever that kept happening, I kept saying to myself, I hope no one's down there. Because can you imagine, like, you're doing your Christmas shopping and then all of a sudden a television just falls right in front of you, or even worse, falls on your head. It's an incredibly funny special, and if I can, I'll give you a link to that particular instalment if you want to check it out for yourself. But I think it's a really good adaptation. There are a couple of things that happen in it that did surprise me, and I found myself going, that's actually pretty clever. So there's a lot of good moments in this, and I really do think Ross Kemp gives a really good performance as this much more EastEndified version of Ebenezer Scrooge. It was actually really a lot of fun. There is one moment that does kind of throw me off, where there's like a CGI snowflake that falls down, and it really kind of is reminiscent of kind of like those old Asylum films where it just comes out of nowhere and it just kind of feels like it distracts you for a moment. But I actually really do like that, and the fact that he's trapped in a loop is a very interesting idea. That's something that no other version has ever talked about before, so I am really happy that I included this one on this, because it is good, and I watched all of these ones as well, so that's my number 8. That's Ross Kemp's A Christmas Carol, and my number 7 is A Christmas Carol 2009. And this one was a effort by Robert Zemeckis, who is responsible for films like Death Becomes Her, Back to the Future, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was a very well-known director, and he was a much-loved director, and to a certain degree his motion capture films are also well-beloved as well, especially around Christmas time. But this was probably the most divisive one of the lot, because this one, even though it is very faithful to the original Charles Dickens story, this version has a lot of problems because of the motion capture, and people often think that because they're trying to make it look very lifelike, it looks very Uncanny Valley-ish, which is where it's sort of like off. It looks human, but it doesn't look quite human. It looks like a very odd thing. But I actually like this version, aside from the fact that it does cheat a little bit and it goes too far into the animated elements of it, like when, say for example, during the Ghost of Christmas Past segments, there's a scene where both Fezziwig and his wife are literally dancing, and they're literally acting like cartoon characters, where she literally spins up in the air like a helicopter, and I thought, God, do we really need to have that sequence in here? Because even though it is showing off how great the animation is, it kind of just feels it's too cartoony for its own good. And Robert Zemeckis has always said he wanted to make things look lifelike. Well, if you want to make things look lifelike, don't de-evolve into animation, or don't go into a cartoon. Keep it as realistic as possible. But it's very weird. It's a very weird combination. But there are good things in this one. I like the fact that in the sequences with the Ghost of Christmas Present, there's a very good moment where Scrooge is being confronted with a bakery, and he basically says, "There are you talk about goodwill to all men, but you'll push up the prices to your fellow man, and so that people can't afford bread for their 7th day. And there are a lot of people who speak in your name." And the Ghost of Christmas Present goes, "There are people who are on your world, Scrooge, that claim to know me and my brothers, but they are as strange to me as my kid, as if we had ever lived. Charge their wrongdoings to them, not us." And it's one of those great moments, because it's like, it's essentially calling Scrooge out and saying, don't start, judging us for people down on your earth who speak in more your name than my name. And it's actually a very good moment. It's actually very well done. And I like the fact that, even though it's a very weird decision, I like the fact that both the ghosts are portrayed by Jim Carrey. I like the idea that both the Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost of Christmas Present, and Ghost of Christmas Future are both played by Jim Carrey, because effectively you're having these three individuals, these three entities, basically serve as a mirror to Ebenezer's past, present, and future. So the fact that they kind of are in some way reflections of him, or reflections of things that he could be rather than what he actually is such an interesting idea. And I like the idea that, that the Ghost of Christmas Past is a candle, and the fact that, he basically wafts around and about. So I like that idea. It's a very good bit of animation. But yeah, there are things in this film that are really good, but I also really like, I'm sure a lot of people have spoken about this moment, but the moment where Scrooge is being confronted with the Cratchit family after Tiny Tim's death was very well done, because it's done in a way where you think, because it's all told from Scrooge literally looking down on the Cratchit family as he's over by the stairs. The Phantom is literally like a shadow, or the ghost is literally like a shadow on the wall, and Cratchit is basically trying to put on a brave face. He's clearly very sad for his son's death, but then at the same time, there's three wonderful moments. Excuse me. But yes, there's a really wonderful moment where he goes up the stairs and he's trying to put on a brave face for his family, but when he goes upstairs to kind of be on his own, he stops right at the point where Scrooge is, like where he's sitting down, and he looks up, and Scrooge can literally see the pain and the absolute uncontrollable grief that's in the man's eyes. I really love that part, because it really shows that Scrooge doesn't just immediately, as if by magic, feel sorry for Bob. He immediately, or feel sorry for him because they have a disabled child. it's because he's literally showing how much this death has taken a toll on him, and how much he literally shows the grief in his eyes, and it's very well done. It shows that he cannot walk away from it, he cannot run away from it, he has to stare and look at it, and I really like that aspect. It's very dark, it's very grim, and it's very sad as well, but it does a very good job of keeping you in that frame of mind. So number 7 is A Christmas Carol from 2009. That's my number 7. And my number 6 is Scrooged from 1988 with Bill Murray. And I absolutely love this film. This was one of my first ever reviews for the Christmas block back when I first started doing YouTube. And I love this version. This version is so delightfully cynical and so delightfully mean-spirited that I just think this film deserves to be seen by most people around Christmas time. Even though it's not necessarily a direct adaptation of A Christmas Carol, it's more of a parody of the story. I still think it's a good version because of Bill Murray's performance. Bill Murray absolutely relishes in the idea of playing an arsehole in this film. Like, he does such a good job at playing a cynical arsehole that it kind of almost you almost don't want him to redeem himself and learn the error of his ways because he's so good at playing an arsehole. But at the same time, I really do like the moment where he has that big epiphany at the end, and he's like saying, I know what it's like to be Christmas, I understand what it's like now, and I want it, and when you like it and you want it, you'll get greedy for it. I love that entire speech because there's such joy in his voice, and I absolutely love it. It's such a great moment. And it's such a feel-good ending as well. Like, it's a really good moment, and all the cast of A Christmas Carol come together, because the whole entire point of this film is there's an entire production of almost like a Christmas Carol live sort of thing going on, and it's very well done. It's very funny. It does what a lot of those variety shows do. They include celebrities, they include weird dance routines, and they try to do it whilst also telling the story of A Christmas Carol. But it's a crap version. It'll be along the same lines of the Star Wars Holiday Special in regards to its legacy if it was forced to continue and air as it was originally intended. So it's actually really kind of funny. I like the fact that the Ghost of Christmas Past is a Brooklyn taxi driver. I love that. I thought he was very funny. I like the fact that the Ghost of Christmas Present is a fairy played by Carol Kane, who enjoys kicking the shit out of Frank. Frank Cross is essentially who Bill Murray plays. He plays a television executive of a TV studio. And it's just a really great adaptation. I love it. It's really funny. It's very cynical, but it's also really heartfelt at the same time. And I like the fact that there is a light at the end of the tunnel for Frank. Whereas in the case of most Christmas Carol adaptations, it says, okay, this is an old man who's clearly wasted his life. He's fucked up his past, pardon my language, but he can redeem himself in the future, whatever little time he has left. That's meant to be the moral of the story, whereas in the case of... And he could live for many more years if he decides to change now. But what's very interesting is he gets a second chance in every respect in this version, which I really do like. And it's just a really great movie. If you haven't seen it, please give it a go. It's a really fantastic adaptation. And of course, it has a score by Danny Elfman, who does most of the Tim Burton scores as well. So hearing his score really does get me in the mood for Christmas sometimes. Even though it is quite bleak and very gothic, it does give me that sense of, you know, Christmas is on its way. Most people would think of Christmas coming with the sound of, you know, Michael Bublé's voice or Bing Crosby or something like that, but I think of Danny Elfman whenever I hear the choir go la 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 la. It really kind of gives me that impression of, oh yeah, Christmas is coming, time to get the dressing gown on, the slippers on, and let's get a glass of hot chocolate and let's just sit and watch Scrooged. And it's a good film, so I'd highly recommend it if you haven't already. That's my number 6, and my number 5 A Christmas Carol adaptation is Scrooge from 1951. And before I say anything about the adaptation proper, I do think that this film wins brownie points because of the opening and main theme. Like most adaptations of A Christmas Carol always try to sound very optimistic and very heartfelt. Like if you listen to the 2009 adaptation, it has this very kind of upbeat, very optimistic Alan Silvestri score, which feels very Christmassy and very light-hearted, but then it very slowly creeps into the darkness. But with the 1951 adaptation, it opens with a great big booming score. Like it goes dun 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 dun, and it feels very kind of, you think to yourself when you're watching it, oh my god, did I accidentally put on a Universal Studios monster movie, like a Frankenstein or a Wolfman movie? Because honestly, it does give you that impression. And then, of course, when you hear the choir slowly come in with Ark the Herald Angels sing, that's such a great moment. And it's so angelic as well, and it really does it does a very good job of kind of telling you what you're going to see without giving it away, which I really do like, unless of course you're familiar with the story, which I really do think is rather impressive. But getting on to the adaptation proper, I love Alistair Sim as Scrooge. I think he does such a good job of really kind of showing how cynical the guy is, but then at the same time, he doesn't want to be as happy as he is around Christmas. It's just because of all the horrible things that have gone on in his life. And you do get it. You do get a very thorough arc with Scrooge in this particular adaptation, where you do feel like you understand what he went through and you understand what he lost in order to get to the point of where he is. And yes, he is a bit of an arsehole in some respects. Like, there's this wonderful moment, which a lot of people don't talk about, but there is this really wonderfully cynical moment where he just basically walks past this woman with her 2 children, and she sings Silent Night on the steps. And there's this moment where the girl walks up to Scrooge with her hands out like this, and she's begging for money effectively, and he just sort of shoves her aside, and he just sort of goes up to the mum and he goes, "Be off with you." He just sort of walks up to his office, and I thought that's great. That's a really good cynical Scrooge moment. But yeah, I friggin' love this version. It's hilarious. I also love the scene where he goes to visit the Ghost of Christmas Present, and he's there in front of the fire, and you know that the food's there, and he's like there with his torch. He's like laughing and going, "Come in and know me better, man. You don't know me. Have you met any of me and my 4 brothers?" And he goes, "No, and I do wish the visitation had been indefinitely postponed." So there's these wonderful little things that Alistair Sim adds to the character that really kind of makes you feel that, oh, there's a little bit more charm to him than what meets the eye. It's not 100% accurate to the book, but it does manage to include a lot of the heart and a lot of the characterisation of Scrooge very effectively. And I don't know why, there's something about the ending when he reveals that he's changed his ways and he's very happy. There's this really wonderful moment where there's several things that he does that's really wonderful. Not only is it really funny when he does the thing where he starts clapping his hands and goes, "I really didn't know anything, I really didn't know anything, and now that I know that I don't know, it's Christmas Day in the morning." It's really hilarious, and Mrs. Dilber is literally like looking, "Has this guy gone mad that's employed me?" And she literally screams, which is wonderful, and he's like going, "Mrs. Dilber, I'm not mad." That moment's all really wonderful. That entire moment when Mrs. Dilber is really sweet and very wonderful, where he gives her like a guinea for a Christmas present, that's all really nice. But then at the same time, there's this really wonderfully hilarious moment, but also really heartfelt moment, where he gets the goose and he's looking for a label, and he goes, label, and he like gets his quill out, and he like has this moment where he like dips his quill in the ink, and he just lets out this very hearty laugh that really kind of warms my heart whenever I hear it. Like whenever you hear him, like when you see the adaptation, you'll see what I mean. But he lets out this very hearty laugh as he's about to sign the label to send it to the Cratchits, and that laugh will always bring a tear to my eye because it's so joyful and it's so happy, and it's a really wonderful moment. And I just think I love this version. This version is so heartfelt and so wonderful, and I just think it's also really funny as well, which I really do like, and that's something you don't expect to hear from a lot of Scrooge adaptations, but this is really funny. So that's my number 5, the 1951 adaptation of Scrooge. My number 4 is 1985's adaptation of A Christmas Carol, which stars George C. Scott, and I think this one is actually kind of interesting because this one isn't very book accurate. A lot of the dialogue is very much, not necessarily invented, but a lot of it is pretty much almost improvised almost. But that kind of makes it even more interesting because George C. Scott is such a fascinating actor, and I love him from films like Exorcist 3, where he plays Kinderman, and in that role he kind of has a lot of great subtle gestures and expressions in a lot of his performances that make you kind of go, oh, I really like this character a lot. And in this one he kind of does the same thing, where he often has moments where he's just looking at someone, or he's looking at something or reacting to something that really gives you a sense of, oh, you can tell what he's thinking just by the way he's looking at someone. Like, there's this really wonderful moment where he's in the past and he's looking at he's standing behind his younger version of himself, and he's looking at his father, who basically just released him from school just so he could put him into a business school, or put him into business right away. He doesn't want him to come home or reconcile with his son. He just wants his son to go straight away into business and make him proud. And there's this really wonderful moment where George C. Scott, as Scrooge, is standing behind his younger self and looking at his father, and you can tell he has such disdain for the guy, and he's really, he's almost psychoanalyzing him almost. It's really wonderful, and I really do think it's a fantastic way of showing that George C. Scott has such a wonderful eye for just giving so much with so little, and that's something that a very good actor can do, that they can just make you feel an entire wealth of emotions just from the look in their eyes, or how they react to something with just their face. No line of dialogue or just expression, no line of dialogue whatsoever, just their facial reactions, and it's really well done, and I really think it's a fantastic adaptation. And there's also just really wonderful things that I just really love in this version. I love the scene where he's basically remembering his old school days, and the Ghost of Christmas Past goes, "Oh, you had your books, didn't you? But they weren't very good they weren't very real for your friendships. They weren't really real friends." And he goes, "Oh, Robinson Crusoe not real? Oh, The Tortoise and the Hare not real? These great wonderful stories, the stories of the Arabian Nights and Ali Baba not real? They're the finest companions for a child with imagination, I have, or something along those lines." And I really do like that, because it really shows that even though Scrooge is still a bit curmudgeonly and a bit grumpy, you really do feel like he has heart, he has emotion where it matters. He's not just cartoonishly dismissive of Christmas. He understands the value of the holiday for a lot of people, but he just has his own personal demons to confront. That's what this entire version does. And I really do like the fact that you really do feel the production of this one. You really do feel like the set of Victorian London in that very foggy opening, where there's no music, there's just the sound of the bells tolling and the, market stalls going and carriages going up and down and people walking in the snow and selling things. It's just such a great atmospheric shot, and it really goes, that this is a very atmospheric piece. And it feels very much, in some instances it does feel like a stage play, because there is a moment where when Scrooge is left under the bridge and he goes out into the fog, he sees the Ghost of Christmas Future, or the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and he sees him sort of a silhouette at first, and it's sort of there in the distance. It feels like a stage play with the way it's with the way it's filmed, where he's very much close to us, and he looks over in the distance and he sees the ghost right there in silhouette, the figure of death right there. It's such a very interesting and fascinating bit of composition there, shot composition, and it's very well done. So this version is wonderful as well. I'd highly recommend it if you can get your hands on a copy. It's currently on Folsom TV if you have a Fire Stick, but I would highly recommend this version at heartbeat, and I think you can see a version of it on YouTube. But yeah, this is a really wonderful version. I'd highly recommend it. That's A Christmas Carol 1985. That's my number 4. And my number 3 is A Blackadder's Christmas Carol. And this show, Blackadder, is basically a period piece written by Ben Elton of The Young Ones fame, and Richard Curtis, who would later go on to make shows like The Vicar of Dibley and, of course, the films Four Weddings and the Funeral, Love Actually, and About Time. And this was one of his earlier endeavours as a writer. And the Blackadder Christmas special is really funny, because throughout a good majority of the show, Blackadder is essentially a character who is a intelligent person. He's very witty, he's very cunning, but he always finds himself serving the most dim-witted monarchs, or the dim-witted leaders. He's always surrounded by people who are less intelligent than he is, and he's also being run and bossed about by someone who is very much lacking in intelligence, and it's very well done, and it's pretty much established throughout the entire show. They go through various different time periods, but in the Christmas special they do a riff on A Christmas Carol, and what they basically do here is they basically make Blackadder into the nicest man in the world, and he's so nice that he literally gives money to every orphan available, even though one orphan basically says, "Penny for the song, sucker, I mean, sir." So you clearly can tell that they're clearly taking the piss out of his generosity, And it's just so funny because when you watch, you don't actually have to watch the show to really get what this adaptation is going for. But when you really do realise where it's going and what it's trying to do, it's actually really brilliant. And I really do love this Christmas special. I think it's really funny just to see how much the crowd and how much of the general people actually really take the piss out of Blackadder and his generosity. Like, there's this really wonderful moment where this elderly woman is selling matches, and she basically is saying, "Oh, you've got a box of matches there, have you? How much are they?" And she gets one out and she goes, £1 a match. And she goes, "Madam, I do expect that to be a lie of sorts." And it's but you can tell with Rowan Atkinson's performance that he really does want to say something, but he also wants to be very nice as well, and it's brilliant. And of course, when the big visitation happens, he gets visited by the three ghosts. They show him all the past versions of himself from all different periods of history, and how much of an arsehole he was in those earlier seasons. And it's so well done because they're doing it with the express purpose of saying, don't make the same mistakes your ancestors did or your descendants are going to make. Be your own you, continue being the good person. But then there's a bit of a twist. He finds himself thinking, I actually like the way my past ancestors behaved. So he starts being an arsehole to everybody towards the end of the entire special, where he ends up punching his assistant in the face and, taking advantage of all sorts of different people, saying that marriage is, first love is about, is kind of like a Christmas cracker, one disappointing bang and then the novelty wears off. But I just love Rowan Atkinson's performance, and again, doing sort of like a reversal on the Christmas Carol formula, because you expect him to be a real grouch and then he becomes good, but in this one it's the reverse. He becomes good at the beginning and then he becomes horrible and greedy and selfish. But that's kind of par for the course because people have been greedy and selfish to him, kind of. So it's a wonderful parody of A Christmas Carol, but it's a very inventive reimagining of A Christmas Carol. So that's my number 3, Blackadder's Christmas Carol. And my number 2 is A Christmas Carol 2019. Now, this version is a little bit different to the other ones that we've been talking about, because this one, even though it's set in Victorian London, it was written by Stephen Knight, who wrote Eastern Promises with David Cronenberg. He also wrote the film Locke, and he also created and wrote the television series Peaky Blinders. And I think this is a very interesting adaptation because it doesn't really 100% follow the formula of it follows the formula of the actual story, but it does a few interesting things here and there. I'm actually going to do something that I haven't done before with this video. I'm actually going to leave a link to this adaptation in the comments, in the description below, so that you guys can check it out for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Because to me, I do like this version. It is very grim, it is very dark, it is very depressing, and there are going to be a lot of scenes in this version that do piss a lot of people off. Case in point, the opening scene of the entire series is a beggar goes up to a grave, undoes his trousers, and basically proceeds to piss all over the snow-riddled grave of Jacob Marley. And if that doesn't tell you what kind of a adaptation you're in for going forward, you may or may not like this version based on just that opening alone. But I do think this particular adaptation is interesting. I like the fact that, like, for example, there's a lot of interesting things that this adaptation does. Let's say, for example, there's this very interesting thing that the Ghost of Christmas Past does with Scrooge, played by Andy Serkis, and he basically appears to him in different forms. When he is first being introduced to him, he is introduced to him via the disguise of his father, and basically showing how abusive and how he delights in torturing him. He murders his pet mouse in front of him. He beats him with a cane. He basically unlocks all these very painful memories just to get Scrooge's attention. And then throughout the past segments, there is a sequence where he basically takes the form of Ali Baba from the Arabian Nights, to kind of show him how innocent his childhood was and how much he kind of used those stories to kind of escape the horrible scenario that he was that he found himself in his boarding school. And that was actually a very interesting thing. But I do think that element of it is going to piss a lot of people off because, of course, it does hint at abuse that his teachers gave him when he was a child, and it is really upsetting. And there's a couple of other things that this adaptation does that might be considered quite upsetting by a lot of people. But I'm willing to give you guys a chance and actually judge for yourselves. Is this adaptation really any good, or am I just basically overselling it? But I want to let you guys know for yourself. So I'm going to do a first and actually leave that version that you can watch on YouTube down in the comments below. Sorry, I had to bring my phone back to life for a second. And that's my number 2 spot. That's the Christmas Carol by Stephen Knight, starring Guy Pearce as Ebenezer Scrooge for 2019. That's my number 2. And my number 1 spot, what's it going to be? Drum roll. My number 1 favourite Christmas Carol adaptation is Scrooge 1970 and A Muppet's Christmas Carol. And the reason why I did this, I know I'm kind of cheating by having 2 films in the number 1 spot, but to me, I love both these adaptations in equal measure. I love the Muppets Christmas Carol because, of course, it's the Muppets. Who doesn't love the Muppets? And seeing all these characters basically play these very iconic roles of Bob Cratchit and all these other characters like Ebenezer Scrooge and Jacob Marley, or Jacob and Robert Marley, and basically, you know, do all this with just essentially the Muppets, effectively. It's such a good idea, and I like various details. Like, say, for example, with the Muppets A Christmas Carol, there's a really good moment where excuse me for my phone's messaging, but there's a wonderful moment where the Ghost of Christmas Present appears, and they give this very interesting detail where he's very absent-minded. Like, he'll say something like, "Oh, come in and know me better, man. This is the lie before the dawn, before the day of Christmas. Did I mention I'm the Ghost of Christmas Present?" He'll keep, mentioning stuff like that, but then at the same time, when Bruce calls him out on it, he'll go, "You're a little absent-minded spirit," and he goes, "No, I'm a large absent-minded spirit." He'll say very light-hearted things like that. And what I really like about this adaptation as well is that Scrooge learns, he actually grows and he progresses throughout the night, and he actually does begin to liven up when the Ghost of Christmas Present appears, and he begins to have a lot more of a smile on his face. And when you hear the song It Feels Like Christmas, he really does feel a sense of lightheartedness. He really wants to give the world a go. He wants to dance and have fun and enjoy in the celebration of Christmas. And when he's at the section where he's like seeing his nephew Fred, he's very genuinely hurt when he sees that, his nephew thinks of him as a curmudgeonly creature, not a rat, not a cockroach, not a lobster or anything like that. It really does break his heart, and it makes him feel like he's not wanted. And that's very heartbreaking. But at the same time, I really do like the fact that the songs are just really amazing as well. I love the Jacob Marley song. I really do think it's a very good, very playful way of showing Jacob and Robert Marley's intentions when they come to visit him. I love the jokes they play, like, "It's good to be heckling again, it's good to be doing anything again." And I love those 2 characters, I really do. The critics, I like to call them. But yeah, they're really hilarious. But yeah, I love that version, of course, but then I also love the 1970 version starring Albert Finney. And the reason why I chose these 2 is they're both musicals, but they're also both very pretty good. And I really like it. I love It Feels Like Christmas, but I'm not going to lie, whenever I hear the song I Like Life, I absolutely feel like I have a tremendous smile on my face. It will warm any... Even if you're the most miserable, the most cold-hearted person on the planet, you can show someone a clip of that song, I Like Life, and they will absolutely feel warm and fuzzy inside. I guarantee it, because it's such a feel-good song. I love the lyrics. I love the storytelling. I like the fact that both Albert Finney plays an older version of Scrooge, but he's also playing Scrooge in the younger sections when he's with the Ghost of Christmas Past, because you really do feel like not just a progression of his actual character throughout the night when he's being visited by these ghosts, but you also get a sense of how he's able to effectively you start to see the physical, not de-escalation, but the sort of the character development, the physical character development of Scrooge throughout his time. That you see him as a very well groomed, very athletic younger man, but then you also see him as sort of like an older man who's very hunched over. He walks in these very like very small steps towards things. He really is showing his age, even though he's played by a younger man. I like that touch, and I really do think it's a very good adaptation. And I think all the songs in both the Muppets Christmas Carol and the 1970 Scrooge film are very feel good. I love them all. I think they're all really wonderful. I love the song Thank You Very Much, and if you've seen the film, you know what that song's about. But if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. I'm sure you can watch a version of it for free on YouTube. You can also see other versions of this adaptation, all the versions I mentioned as well. You can see a version of the 1951 Scrooge on YouTube as well. You can see all of these for free, I think. But I really do love each and every single one of these. But I think both 1970 Scrooge and The Muppets Christmas Carol are two of my favourites. I don't know which one to choose and which one's the better one, because I love them both equally. It's like choosing your own children. Which one would you prefer? I can't say that because I love them both. But to me, I think that's really wonderful. I really just find it fabulous to do this list. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this top 10 list. I'm sorry it went on for a bit too long. We're going into 45 minutes now. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I want to know down in the comments below, what are your favourite adaptations for Christmas Carol? What are your go-to adaptations for A Christmas Carol during this time of year? Do you have a favourite or any of the favourites on my list right here? Have you seen any of the other versions that may not have appeared on this? Have you seen the Blackadder Christmas Carol special? Have you seen, Scrooged, or, the 2019 version? If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, please subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you soon for another video. I'm sorry it took so long for me to upload another video. I've been very busy. I had a birthday in November. I'm now 31. And I recently published a collection of short stories, which I will leave in the description, a link in the description below as well. So I hope you're all doing very well. Take care. Bye-bye for now.